atmosphere than there has been for a very long time. And what its effect is, I'll leave that to you to make your own judgments on. But it's really interesting when we look at that, what the relative contributions to that have been, and in an economic model where we were to sequester carbon and be paid for it, Australia has, of all the places in the world, agricultural economies, huge opportunities to do that. Notwithstanding just the natural importance of putting more carbon into our soils. There's a lot of it there to do. Alan Yeomans, who is the son of P.A. Yeomans, came up with this account, if you like. And his idea is that we go to the United Nations, and the United Nations would give a bill, an invoice to every country for the emissions that they've generated in the last 50 years, and say, all right, you've got to sequester that into your soils, into your agricultural soils. And then, if we did that, well then things would change pretty quickly, then we'd see if climate change is real or not. Here in Australia, we have one of the biggest estates of arable land in the world. We have actually more than the US. And for us to overcome our emissions over the last 50 years, there's only a 0.2% increase in soil carbon in the top inch, 12 inches of the soil. Another thing that we've got here, sort of a fork in the road moment, is in the consumer. And this is where we've just had Joel Salatin and Daniel and Cherie Salatin here, and we're their agents. We wheel them around the world, sort of talking up their particular mode of agriculture and consumer interaction. And the fork in the road is, well, are we going to have a personal relationship with the consumer? And people in commodity-based agriculture are the ones who have the least personal relationship with their consumer. As you get closer to town, people are doing the sort of more community-supported agricultural operations and whatnot. They're sort of joined at the hip with their consumer. But there is a consumer base out there that we believe will be actually the driving change in agriculture. We've sort of come to a point that it's probably not going to be the producer so much who changes. It'll be more the consumer who changes the producer, because agriculture is the business, after all, of producing food, fibre and energy products according to a consumer demand. So if the consumers change the way that they want you to produce, well then you will do it because there's a consumer demand for it. So Yeomans came up in 1958 with the keyline scale of permanence, which you can read there: climate, land shape, water supply, farm roads, trees, permanent buildings, subdivision fences, and soils. We've morphed that with our Regrarian platform to include people. Yeoman's scale was about trying to have people ordinate in their priorities of what do we do first, where do we sit in all of this. The climate is pretty well fixed, you get what you get. The weather is what you get. You've got a pattern of climate that you get. The geography is shaped, or the landform is shaped by the interaction between the geology and the climate over a long time. The amount of water that you have is a relationship between the climate and the landform, which we see here anyway. So those sort of elements are really fixed. And then when we come down to what we can do, well, we can change. We can't change the climate. That's hard. Takes, if you believe it, some people, it's taken about 300,000 years since we discovered how to make fire that we've got to this point. So it's taken a huge amount of human effort. To change landforms, this takes a lot of effort. Big yellow machines kind of help. To change the amount of water that we've got is, we have to change our landform. We have to dig holes in the ground. We have to use a lot of energy to change it. So as you go down to this, there's a, when we get down to, say, soils, anybody here knows as a producer, you can destroy soils very, very quickly by your decision making. Or you can equally start to redirect them to being back to being regenerated relatively quickly. You can't grow a forest very quickly, right? It takes a lot more effort. You get the picture? So, and so on. So if we look at climate To yeomans, the climate was really about how much rain you get, how much sunlight you get, how cold it is, how hot it is, normal climatic considerations. To me, when I developed my platform, I wanted to bring in other elements here, and to me, the human climate is just as difficult to change sometimes as is the biospheric climate. And a lot of us, when we come to the plate, when I'll talk to Darren and Veronica and you guys today, one of the first things I want to know is, all right, well, I can see what the biospheric climate is here because I can read the plants, I can look at the landscape, I can see lots and lots of different things which tell me a whole array of things about this climate, but I need to know what your climate is. What do you bring to the plate? What's your attitude toward all of this? What are your aspirations? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What makes you, as Bruce Ward said, what makes you do what you want to do? And why do you do what you do? So those sort of questions. But then also, what are your enterprise goals? What are your aspirations on that level? Do you have a predilection to sheep, dorpers, or is it Wiltshire horns, or is it merinos, or all of these things that people will sort of put forward as part of their determination in life. Do we want to have a family-based enterprise? Are we speculative? Are we happy to lease? Do we want to own? Are we happy with debt? All of those things we need to know. And that really is what I call the rules of the game. When you create those rules, then we know where we're marching forward to. So we're very influenced in that by things like holistic management and otherwise, but what we also understand in the diffusion of innovation, which is what we're talking about here. We're talking about an innovative approach to the way that we organise ourselves and the way that we approach our enterprises and our landscapes is that we have to understand where we fit. Are we an innovator ourselves? Are we an early adopter? Are we an early majority or a late majority? Or are we just a laggard? Are we recalcitrant? So how do we fit in all of that? Because part of this is that we need to understand our own personalities and the personality of the people that we're working with, so that we can move on forward and build knowledge. Start to get some persuasion around what the directions that we might want to go in. Make decisions which are informed and holistic. Implement those decisions, and then get a confirmation of that, so that we've got a full feedback, and then the knowledge that we've got has been persuaded and is ultimately confirmed. So some of you here, I would probably ask, who here has done any holistic management education at all? So quite a few of you, so I don't beat that path too much, but we're very much influenced and put it out there that holistic management decision making is a really positive tool for helping us to determine which way we're going to go with a whole array of things. It's by no means, I don't look at it as being a dogmatic approach, but one thing that it really helps for us to generate is that context of you and your landscape and the community of organisms that you're working with, so that we can then start to devise strategies. Then there's the practical outcome of holistic management in its grazing planning and all of those sorts of financial planning, etc. Land planning, I would say, in holistic management is a weak link of HM, and that's been readily identified by everybody from Alan Savory, the late Bruce Ward, and others. It's kind of culminated a few years ago, and a lot of the HM educators in Australia dragging me to Orange for 5 days to teach them land planning, to sort of infuse keyline land, whole farm planning techniques into their own outreach. Permaculture is another system that we use, and I've been involved in the permaculture movement for since '93, I think. And it's a system that a lot of people sort of connotate with sort of a hippie-based agricultural system, or subsistence based systems, but there's a pretty dynamic fusion of ethics and design principles, ecological design principles, which are really strong and worth looking at. Which I suppose is where we're at with this. We're not sort of saying let's not do that because it sounds too weird. Let's just have a look at it as consenting adults. And so, well, let's see and just take the good things out of it, and if it seems like crap, well then leave it alone. But I think there's a lot of value in a lot of different things that are out there, and all of these innovative approaches. Keyline is another design framework. It's been described as the first integrated broad-scale landscape design system that's ever been devised and applied to very large landscapes, particularly here in this country. And but then there's other things like, how are we going to deal with the toxic build-up of chemistry, novel chemistry that we've applied to our landscapes? And so we look at the work of people like Paul Stamets from fungi.com in the US, who's literally finding fungi that will unravel the molecular structures of some of these extraordinary novel compounds that we've applied to our landscapes and are polluting our waters and making residues in our soils, etc. Looking at diesel as a nutrient. Right? So there's all of this sort of thing that's really brave and astounding. We're also influenced by people like J. Russell Smith, who wrote a book called Tree Crops of Permanent Agriculture. I've got my little solitary carrot here with me this morning, just to remind me that there are plants out there that we can integrate into Mediterranean landscapes, which every year yield, drought or no drought, will produce quite a lot when you've got the order cleared there. And other plantings, this is one of my clients in Mexico who's got Jimmy Elizondo Braun, and he's got Leucaena plantings at spacing, kind of like the Tagesasti plantings. So he's using the crop as a hedgerow and as a pasture species at the same time, as a woody pasture species. So that he can build up the protein levels in his pastures, which most tropical foragers don't have, and so on. And getting shelter and whatnot. Then when you really take things to a big extent, people like the late Dr. George Chan, who came up with ZERI, Zero Emissions Research Initiatives, and how you can really push the envelope on yield. Now, for those of you who came to the Salatin's presentation in Manjimup the other day, you would have seen that firsthand. These guys are really trying to extract as many yields out of their landscape as possible and get an economic gain out of each one of those. So it's not fluff. You can't get to get a sort of a dynamic organisation like that by being fluffy. It's it's a serious business of trying to get a feasible outcome of every level of the operation. Most of us here would remember when we did biology in year 10, if we were paying a point of attention when we were in year 10, the laws of thermodynamics. And one of those laws is that energy never disappears. It just changes in its state. And so that's one of the things that people like George Chan, George Pauly, Joel Salatin, many other people now are sort of saying, all right, well, we take something from one state, now we take it into another, and each time we do that, we take an economic yield out of that, and we generate employment and livelihoods. Another thing is Karl-Heinz Schwartz and Lynn Margulis's work in understanding what are the real rules of nature and what are the kind of opportunities. So when you look at, that no species eats its own waste, and I've